ahead and we start the recording here. All right, well, welcome to lesson 3. This is technically the midpoint, but the reality is you're beyond the midpoint now. We've got you working on your Almar case 1, and that's done. Now it's off to Almar part 2, and then start getting ready for your final benchmarking plan, and then one more individual assignment, which is a little bit involved. I'll certainly talk to you about all these things tonight. All right, so what we're doing tonight. Hey, look at that very top bullet there. It says breaking news. Your Almar Paint Part 2 is now due on the 31st of October. So we're adding an extra week to that. Quite frankly, I think it's just an oversight. When our IT person was compiling this, Almar is really supposed to be due on the very last week of the course. So what happens this week is, we're still finishing up the reach out phase, and then we have to get to the analysis phase. So we haven't even given you anything really yet to compile your data with. And that happens this week and next week. So that's why we allow you 2 weeks to get to the finish line with Almar Paint. All right. But as equally big on the news is that we're not going to have a webinar next Wednesday. I have an unexpected trip that I have to take, and I've coordinated with Jack Kowalczyk, who's the master's program chair, and he's agreed to let me go ahead and pre-record the webinar and then post it. So my intention is tomorrow night at this time I'm going to record lesson 4 and then turn it over to NGS for posting. I don't know if they'll post it on Friday or not, but the week 4 webinar will certainly be posted before next Wednesday, and you can look at it at that point. What I'll do for the week 4 webinars, I'll put a code phrase in there someplace. You listen to it, and you just tell me what the code phrase is on the discussion board, and you'll have credit for week 4 webinar. All right, so let's look at last week for a little bit. We were busy just talking about what the preparing for a benchmark looks like. It's trying to figure out who you're going to benchmark with. You get your team together. You have to develop your questions, and that is really by far the hardest part. And then you have to begin this thing called secondary research or secondary benchmarking, whatever term you like to use. And to reaffirm that lesson, we have the Almar case study, which I've read everybody's paper and provided feedback on everybody's paper. Yeah, everybody got into the questions and answered the questions for appropriately, and came up with good ideas on the what we're benchmarking when we get to the company, what we're going to look at once we're inside the company. And then you were asked to prepare some benchmarking questions, which you've done a good job on. So with that, when we get later into this session, I'm going to bring open Almar Part 2. So as you prepared to provide for Almar Part 1, so did I. So instead of colluging everybody's inputs together into a questionnaire, we'll just work off of mine at this point forward. So what happens is that, all right, I prepared a questionnaire and I prepared the survey and the as well as the interviews. And I'm going to give you that raw data in part 2. And what you'll have to do is just make something of it. So I'll cover that when we get over to that. So on the lesson 2, do I have any general questions on anything from last week? And that would include your Almar submission. Okay, well, nothing heard then. I'm going to move on. What we're doing tonight is we're looking at the next slides. Will begin some team presentations. I didn't put them in any particular order, but I pulled them off the site, and it's your team secondary research keywords and initial thoughts of what you might do secondary research on. So your slides will be up there, and as you see your team slides come up, we just need one person from each team to come up and brief your slides. And then we'll go on to reviewing the benchmarking model again, reminding what phase we're in, which right now is the reach out phase this week. Then we have a couple of fun slides about the benchmarking code of conduct. And then we'll start talking about preparing data instrumentation, which is, after you've gone to do your primary benchmark, you've received all this data back. The question is, what do you do with it? And that's where we need to start our instruction. And then some more discussion on selecting primary benchmarking partners. I can't go over that enough because it's something that gets stuck in people's head. We have the two types, which are strategic and operational. Then we have the sources of data. There's four sources of data. You've just got to figure out how everything slots into it. So we're going to talk some more about that. And then the creative benchmarking from Harvard Business Review. I'll pop that on the screen. It's really pretty slick what they've done. And I'll talk more about that, although I would call that a functional benchmarking. And then we'll look at Almar Paint case study. We'll talk about our assignments a little bit more, and that'll be it for the evening. But it'll take us a little bit of time. So here we go on with the next slide. All right, so we have Team UTC. So either Cameron or Edgar, if you come online, and we'll go over your next slide.
Okay, I think I could lead this one.
Okay, Edgar.
Or you want to? I guess we could both go.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
All right. So for internal benchmarking, we're looking at our site. We have two buildings. One has the site cells, so the different like 737, Embraer, 777, Airbus, and then we have a Hamilton site, which is just down the street that we want to benchmark their FPY process. And secondary sources that we would use would be ASQ and LexisNexis, as well as our internal intranet at UTC. And Edgar and I will both be tackling, I'll be tackling Hamilton, he'll tackle interiors, the site cells.
So the next one that we have is, or the next two rather, one of them is Boeing is our...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. So Boeing actually is, and I mistyped that, it's not competitive, that's actually a customer one. So we would look at what their requirements are. Because they are a direct customer, we do have information of things that they look at. Secondary sources, we have a internal customer representative that we can ask questions or kind of be our liaison if we need it. And one of the things that we would like to look for is what are the quality standards. It's kind of the CRM in a way, but more so defined to really know what it is that they look at specifically, what do they think is critical versus what our site deems as critical. The next one is Rockwell Collins, which is a strategic one, being that Rockwell Collins is known as a world-class business. So their standards, they're either like #1 or #2 in most customer surveys. And it was actually recently acquired by Utah, so it will become part of the business as well. They are AS 9100 certified as far as we know. And so some of the things that we look for in keywords would be best-in-class requirements, more so looking at the difference between what they have and what Utah's currently has, to see pretty much differentiate how it is ranked as best in class, and how can we close our gap, at least close to 737 gap, to meet those standards. And so Cameron and I will be tackling each one of those as well.
Okay, let's see. You have another slide here as well.
All right, and these are mainly generic benchmarking ideas that we have. Papa Murphy's Pizza is one, and why we think it's important is to look at their defect or rework. How often do they mess up orders, and kind of see their process. And secondary benchmarking would be Google Scholar. And what would a good search word that would be helpful would be order accuracy. And then with Toyota, we have it on there twice because we want to look at two different aspects from Toyota, one being their data entry accuracy, as well as their FPY paperwork related rejections. With the data entry accuracy, we would look at Google Scholar as a secondary resource, and helpful keywords could be paperless data record keeping. And then also with the FPY paperwork related rejections, the main focus is reducing the human error. And then with Amazon, kind of the same thing with materials and paperwork handling, figuring out how they use a paperless data entry and scanning system. I know that almost every single employee there walks around with a scanner, and almost everything is paperless. So that'd be nice to look into and see how accurate it is with them and how they set up their process. And then BJ's Brewery, it's actually kind of funny because Edgar and I met up there to go over this homework assignment, and we noticed all the waiters and waitresses walking around with basically like a little iPad that they used to take orders. So everything was then paperless. So we started asking her about why they chose to go with that and any problems that they encountered with going with that. And it was really interesting. So that's some digital real-time data entry that we would like to look into. And then with Bank of America, another generic one, it's just their data entry and compliance. We know that they have to deal with a lot of regulations. So that's one thing we would like to look into, and maybe set up an interview with someone, because there's a big Bank of America headquarters just down the road from our plant. So meeting up with someone over there, or seeing if we can talk with someone would be nice.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, your two slides are just excellent. There's only two of you on the team, and you both are going to now have a very easy time of it as you get into the individual assignment, which is to pull down 6 relevant searches. So each of you got some great stuff to work on. And if I were you guys, I would team up for the pub inspection. Go there and do a site visit again. Make sure it's legit with those iPads. All right. All right. And any other teams with comments on what you just saw on the 2 slides? You guys are definitely targeting. You sat down. I can see that you brainstormed. You thought about what you could get out of it, how you're going to get to it, what method you'll get there, and then you gave yourself a good starting word with some good initial search words. All right, well done, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Team Prime next.
I could start.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll bring you on to the next slide.
All right. All right, this is our secondary research benchmarking slide. First column, some potential topics for benchmarking. We've got FMC aircraft, which is your fully mission capable aircraft. Also looking at parts ordering process, parts storage process, parts delivery process. we've got a lot of processes in this. It's a whole lot of factors and processes for this one thing. So we've got a lot of players in this. Also, vendor relationships, parts repair process, and warehouse process and procedures. Okay, for our aircraft, we're looking at yield rate or the MC rate, mission capable rate. For parts ordering, just looking like maintenance production slides. That's where we keep the data for that. Parts delivery process is also a supply database that they store all their information on. Vendors relationships, we want to look at the contract because the military has a contract with these vendors. And if we can give somebody to convince somebody to give them up or let us look at them, then that'll be something we'll be looking into. Parts repair process, that's maintenance production data. Most of the data that we'd be suggesting to look up in, it's kept on the SharePoint and it's all electronic. Some of our secondary sources, I think the Coast Guard is probably the closest thing to us. So we would want to look at what kind of process they use or how they do as far as aircraft and readiness. For the parts ordering, supply data, they have another database. We'd look into that. And the rest of those are AFIs. Those are Air Force instructions, basically are manuals that tell you how to do this job or how it's supposed to be set up. And for the vendors, back to the contracting squadron. We have a squadron on the base that deals specifically with contracts. Again, with the parts repair, go to some back shops. We'd have to call other bases because Moody doesn't have a back shop. Once upon a time they did, but they've phased those out. We'd be looking to see how that would play and if it would be an idea or maybe a suggestion to bring it back. Also, the warehouse AFI, again, it's our Air Force instruction. Next column is some search words. Got military readiness, ordering parts, warehouse storage, delivery and transportation, parts, military and vendor contracts, and again, aircraft back shops, military warehouse operations. A lot of these, probably most of them, since I have direct contact, I'll probably be investigating with those.
Okay, I'll look at the next slide. Hit one more slide.
If we can get one of the other team members to take this one. Maybe not.
Okay, well, it looks like you're just presenting the databases that are available for your search. All right, so let's come back here and let me just talk about this for a minute. Jay, it looks like you've got plenty to search, but you know this assignment calls for every student to produce six sources. So I see 2 that says team. Does that mean that, you know, it makes me think that you guys didn't meet and talk this out, because there should be everybody's name should be assigned to something here, so that they have a way to go off. I get that, you know, all the AFI business is definitely in your backyard and you're going to have to do it. But there's other things you can be researching. You know, readiness isn't just a C-130 issue and isn't just a Coast Guard issue. If you look at
Yes,
airlines, they have to have their stuff going. Cabs. Yeah, go ahead. Am I missing a slide?
No, sir, but I can add on to that from what Jay he had just supplied me with, sir. Through some of the research that I completed for the past week, which the one that I looked into was for how the Boeing company supplies the Army with their Chinook. Yes, we're talking about C-130, yeah. Juliet, but I wanted to see their processes, how they supplying. I'm an Army person, so of course I'm gonna lean on the Army to see how their processes work. If to compare what they do to what we've been going through with the C-130 Juliets. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to take a look at, to deep dive into it and see what the processes are for that.
Oh, yeah. You should have included it on this slide.
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's the part I'm worried about your team, just because, let's see, how many we got on here? We still got 5 on this team. So Judith needs to have an assignment out there. Jay, you got yours. Matt, I saw with him one. I didn't see anything for Megan. All right, so I see this as incomplete. The idea is to have enough stuff here for your team to break away and go out and complete their assignment, which is produce 6 secondary searches. So, EJ, even though you're going to do a lot of this work here, what you showed, everybody has to go out and produce their own 6.
Sir.
We'll work on it, sir. I have some idea.
All right. All right, moving on then to, and this was good here, by the way. These are great search engines. All right, so on to team variation.
Okay, so hi, this is Ron. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Ron, go ahead. I'll flip over to the next slide.
Okay, please. I know this seems a little light, kind of like based on the feedback you just gave. We were kind of concentrating on, how to move forward. We did talk about kind of like the things that really mean, specifically to our project. One of the main things was the right to first time. So the first thing that we selected was the medical device field, in which, obviously that's instrumental in having the absolute, right product come out right the first time is something that I kind of chose to investigate. And then after that, we kind of started looking into specifically what we do in our project, which is kind of like the welding, the springs, and the stamping of the metal itself. And we kind of put our name to that. And it seems a little bare bones right now, but we kind of hope that it'd be a start to, kind of move and expand from that. I kind of want to stop there unless any of my colleagues want to add, but that's kind of where we left off. I want to hear your feedback on that.
Oh, okay, well, here's the feedback. At least I see everybody with a starting point. And, I don't know that I call it light. When you get the keyword searches, which really are in my opinion, the most important part of this is not every team member knows what's going on with the project, so you really got to tell them where to begin. So you've done that. Each of them look like 4 or 5 different things that they can at least start their keywords on. And you do have them in a field. If I was to throw light up there, it would only be that there's other things you could be looking at, besides just welding. It's anybody who has to put components together. So, and I think you'll just get there. So you just know you got to do that. At least we can see you're heading out to the field with everybody with an assignment.
Agreed, and me being kind of close to home with the pharmaceutical device industry, we kind of know right the first time. So I just kind of felt investigating into that with going, very far. I think just going out of industry, but everything else seems in line.
All right. Okay, I'm moving on. Unless anybody else from the team wanted to add anything. Okay, then moving on then. All right, so now that you've presented your team secondary research plan, all right, now you have to turn this into an individual assignment. So the deliverable for the assignment is to document your findings from secondary benchmarking research using the template. And that'll be here, I think the next 2 slides, about 2 slides from now. So when you use the templates, all right, each student will complete it says successful search of online or hard copy research sources. You demonstrated that already with the different databases you're going to use, or if you're going to use internal instructions, that's fine. but each student has to have 6 distinct benchmarking findings with supporting evaluation analysis. All right, so and then here's your criteria, that's listed below in these bullets. And then some more instructions on this, and showing you what the evaluation criteria will be on your template. We want you to use multiple sources, and it looks like you guys are going to do that. I didn't see anybody saying, oh, we're just going to use ProQuest. But we do want you to get into ProQuest or LexisNexis and give us at least one finding from either of those 2 databases. Those are NGS databases I demonstrated last week, and make one of your 6 from there. So don't give me everything that's Google Scholar, and don't give me everything out of an instruction. All right. So this one's due next Wednesday evening, or next Tuesday night, before we get into officially week 4. And the reason it's due next week is that you'll post it all up online, and every team now will have all 6 of theirs up there. And then what you have to do as a team is you've got to look at everybody's top 6 picks, and then you'll multi-vote. You'll do whatever you do to pick the best bullets out of everybody's searches as you start making your final team presentation of your benchmarking plan. More to follow on that. But these have to be in next week in order for you to be able to accomplish that before week 5. Okay, so here's your template. This template's available under the resources, the course resources. So just pick this one. There's an example on the top, how to fill one out. And then obviously delete that one out, and then complete your 6, and then put it up in there. When I say put it up, post it in the course material where it needs to go. And we'll share it around to everybody.
Crazy.
All right, so any questions on this template? I'll just give you a minute here to look at it. Probably the biggest deal is the left-hand column here. So if you're recommending something as a resource, is make sure that where it says the database reference, if you can click on that and make it go right to this reference, that's what helps you in the long run. So you find your resource, you state your rationale for it, then you talk about the application to your MVP, and then you talk about what specifically is there about this article that has you interested in it, and then the far right column is potential application for other teams. So you'll walk away with most of the research you have is, well, this could also be value in a generic way to this other team, stuff like that. All right. So now we're moving on. So that was your assignment. Now we're definitely into lesson 3 now. You've already demonstrated that you have a knowledge of what local resources are, what the professional resources are, meaning that you know that the databases are out there, where you plan to go start your initial searches. We know what professional resources look like, as you were asked in the library forum DQ2 last week. Everybody was asked to look at your professional libraries, and everybody gave a response. I was surprised that most of you do have professional resources like ASQ or APQC or other business intelligence databases that you can tap into. And plus, most people indicated that you can electronically get onto your public library and have access to many of the databases that NGS has at no cost to you. So that's pretty nice to have. All right, so this is an oddly placed slide, just because we already had you working in Almar. So we have this case study going, and we've asked you to kind of think ahead and produce the questionnaire and to talk about the people you would want to talk to, and then we asked you to write about it in your Almar case study write-up. And all these things were pretty much in there. What documents would you collect? And this is all we're saying here is prior to interviewing, what do you want to get from that other company? So again, another nice checklist. And folks, for this whole course, my recommendation to you is to download all these slides. And if you do nothing else with them except save them, and then one day when they ask you to be part of a benchmarking team, you just pull all the stuff back up, and it's just from lesson 1 all the way through lesson 4 there, it's just all the steps that you need to do to pull off benchmarking. All right, and Moni even talked about doing focus groups. So I was impressed with that. Let's go on to interview tips. This was also in last week's interview, or last week's slides. And just a reiteration there that the reminder here is that you're a subject matter expert on your process. And then when you go out to do something with somebody else, you're talking about their baby. And the idea is to get from them how their process works without you revealing to them your processes necessarily. And I like this one question that popped up in one of the proposed survey questions. And I thought it was really clever. And simply ask the question like this: why does your process work so well? Oh my gosh. If you want to energize anybody, you just ask them about their process in a positive light like that, and they're gonna open up the vault for you because they want to show off what it is that they do so well. So I thought that was a very good and very, very good open-ended question to ask. So instead of asking, well, what do you're still asking the questions, do you have any internal failures, which is like your equipment not working right, but at the end of the day, you know that you're there looking at them because they have some kind of mojo you want from them, and asking them in a positive manner like that is really going to yield you some good notes. All right, also another problem with interviews though, and I listed as a problem, is that when you come in with big interview sheets, it also yields big responses, and you've got to compile all those. And if you're going into a company that has 100 people that you're interviewing, oh my gosh, you're going to have 60, 70 pages of notes easily that you have to figure out what to do with and compile. So it's always worth up front trying to trim that down to what's the necessity, breaking long sections of interviews down into, let's ask some short questions. We'll get some open-ended response, but give me a short answer to tell me about how the distribution of the paint goes after it leaves canning. So you just get that one piece of it. Instead of asking about the whole paint process, you're asking about just one point of it. All right, let's go on. I don't know if anybody's been part of a focus group. Focus groups tend to be more freewheeling than an interview does, because you're bringing in a group of people and you're asking them for tell us about a process, and then all of a sudden you've got 10 people telling the stories with slight variations on it. The good part with it though is they tell you the story, they tend to paint a better picture of their process than one person would. And some of the tools that you use in here is the affinity diagram, which shows, all the different parts of their system, and it may not be well connected in your focus group, but you'll be able to lead there with more questions as you get into the personal interviews. I got to tell you, I've not been a focus group person in the benchmarking I've done, but really it seems to work well in a qualitative environment. I'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a few minutes. All right, so this slide's called comment analysis. This is by far the hardest thing to do when you're out there collecting data, because you've gone out and you've done the interviews and the focus groups, and you've got survey questions, and when you have that analysis, like I say, you might have to take half a page of writing, and you're trying to truncate it down into a bucket a bucket of people who said similar things so that you can score it or offer it back as a best practice. This group thinks this is the best way to go. And then you start looking for outliers. And so you have these other buckets which are maybe not mainstream, but you're obliged as a benchmarker not to ignore them. You just can't throw data away when you're benchmarking. So it's there, but you have to do something with it. All right, interestingly here, and I got to tell you, I didn't write this particular slide, and I didn't think about it like this. If you look it down to that fourth bullet, it says use survey first and follow up with interview or focus group for deeper and fuller understanding of comments. When I think about it, I don't disagree with that, because when you're surveying, you're surveying assembly line. You're not, and it could be management too. But the idea here is that surveys usually are put into a Likert scale or a multiple choice, something along those lines. And you can actually score them out right there in the field. And you can find a trend right off the bat if someone's satisfied or not satisfied. Surveys, by the way, really are a qualitative instrument. And I'll talk more about that here in just a few minutes. So I think that's a good bullet, and I had not practiced that before, but I think I would if I have to go benchmark again. Surveys first, follow up with the interview and focus groups, so you can maybe lean your conversations into what the survey findings are already telling you. All right, so we're shifting gears now. There's this thing called the benchmarking code of conduct. It's available as a resource material and on the portable for you. And there's 8 principles here from APQC, which is what NGS follows. As you did your MVP agreements with your sponsors, your charters, it actually falls along these practices here. But there's the principle: legality, exchange, confidentiality, principles of use, principles of contact, preparation, completion, and understanding of action. So things like legalities, like, they're not going to come in and show you their proprietary information. Principles exchange is going to talk about things like, well, if we let you in the door, you're going to share with me 100% what you learned here. Confidentiality might say, look, we're going to let you into our pharmaceutical lab here to take a look, but when you write about this, we're not going to be, you're going to refer to us as company X. All right, then the principle of use, it could have a limiter. These are things that help you get in the door with benchmarking partners. This says, look, we're just using this to increase the safety of our own medical lab. So you'll talk about the principle of use. All right, and the principle of contact is that it's saying that we're not going to reach into your company without going through our points of contact in the company. And also, we're not going to be talking about your company to other companies. Then it talks about the preparation, which is simply what your timelines are, and then your completion, what you're going to do with it when you're done. And then the last one, which is the understanding and action. It means that once we're done, we may implement some of what we learned, and we will credit you with it. So the whole thing's available up on the, it's available on your resource material. So in the next couple of slides here, we're going to propose a couple of scenarios to you, and then maybe someone just come online and say what they think about the scenario. So we want to identify which principles apply to each of the following questions and explain how you would handle each of these code of conduct dilemmas. So here, we'll get one right here. Your boss wants to get process descriptions and data on logistics management systems from 3 other organizations. She does not want you to give those organizations any information about your process. What do you do? So somebody pop online and talk that one out.
Would that involve having something written out prior to doing the benchmark that they are in agreement between the three organizations to be benchmarked and what is going to be agreed upon?
Well, each of these questions, you kind of take it for what its face value is. Your boss is saying, here, I want you to go get process description from 3 other organizations. And by the way, we're not going to share any information about our process. So first of all, is that a good thing, a bad thing, or questionable thing?
I'd probably say questionable.
Yeah, most definitely questionable, because the idea with benchmarking is it's a two-way street. That's the whole idea of this. We are supposed to share our results. Who's going to let you in and just look at their process without you sharing? So what do you do? That's got to be the question.
You try to convince her of the pros and cons of not sharing the information with the other organizations?
That's absolutely it. And because you took Jones's class on benchmark and you downloaded everything that I have on this site, all you have to do is open up and print out the benchmarking code of conduct, which says that if we're benchmarking, we're going to share. That's just the basic principle of benchmarking. So if you want to get in someone else's door, we do it with the understanding that the information we receive, we will share back with the companies we got it from. All right, so let's go on to the next one. You've conducted a benchmarking study involving emergency in-flight procedures with 5 other organizations, 3 of which are commercial airlines. You are asked to present your study at a trade conference. How do you ensure the confidentiality and still make your presentation?
Would that be like your earlier example about changing the company's names?
I would think so, huh? Or you could go back to the company and ask them if you can use their name, right? But really, when
Gotcha.
you're doing
Okay.
that many other organizations, it really is best to blindfold their names. Okay, well, here's another one here. Your organization participated in a consortium benchmarking study. Later, another organization approaches you and wants to add its information and review the results of others. What do you do? So you've participated in the study already. Now another organization approaches you and wants to add its information and review the results of others. What do you do?
You didn't have the approval from the others to share with this person.
That's right, ma'am. That is 100% it. Sorry, if they weren't signed on to the original charter, you can't do that. All right, very good. All right, next one's a senior member in the organization has some key knowledge of your benchmarking activity. He asks you to provide the names of contacts at 10 companies that are good at handling customer complaints. What should you do? So your team's out there doing the benchmarking, and your senior members asking you for names of contacts at 10 companies that are good at handling customer complaints.
I wouldn't feel comfortable with that request. To what end? Why will he want that information?
Yeah, that's right. It's going on right now. You have confidentiality with them, and certainly your senior manager shouldn't be reaching out into your subjects. What could you do though? Yeah, you might not be comfortable. But meanwhile, as senior member, what could you do if you wanted to get that to them?
Ask those organizations whether they want to share
There we go.
with your
Otherwise,
boss.
you've absolutely got it. Got it right. Ask them if they want to share it. All right, last bullet on the screen there is your organization has gained great insight after benchmarking a software development process from a world-class benchmarking partner. Now that organization is requesting data that your organization considers to be sensitive. What should you do?
They should be able to share it since they both agreed to the benchmark.
I would agree. If that's what your agreement was, that we're going to look at these sensitive areas and where you've agreed to share, we would share back. However, though, if you benchmarked one area that they let you into and they want you now to reveal some sensitive area in another area, it's like, well, sorry, that wasn't within the charter of our benchmark. So that one could go either way. All right, so now we got some shorter ones here. So we just want to categorize each of these sentences as either good, bad, or questionable practices. So using secondary research to locate public documents about a target company, is that good, bad, or questionable benchmarking practice?
Good.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's how we do it. All right, trespassing on a company's property with the intent to collect information.
Bad.
Need to be arrested.
Yeah. All right, those were easy ones, okay? Recruiting employees from competing companies for the purpose of obtaining information.
Bad practice.
I had thought that.
Questionable.
I had thought that after I thought it was bad, I thought it was questionable. And then my professor said it was a good thing. Because that's how we keep our industries sharp. If that company does not want you hiring them, they will hire them with a non-disclosure agreement that says you may not work for anybody in this industry for the next 5 years. That happens a lot up in Silicon Valley. And actually you see it happening in the government. You can't come back as a lobbyist for 5 years now after you retire from the military. Yeah, I agree. I still think it's questionable. But remember, this is you. You're trying to get this stuff. All right, number 4 will be a little easier to sort out. Bribing individuals to act as informants.
Jail time.
Yeah, so that's not one of the categories, but okay. Bad. Yeah, definitely bad. Number 5, purchasing competitive products to accomplish reverse engineering.
I think that'd be good.
Good. Most classes say it's not good. But in Watson, you can read in the back of the book talking about the Xerox benchmark, and that's what Robert Camp did. He went out and bought a Canon printer and reversed engineered it to figure out why their Xerox copiers were costing so much money to produce. And he found they're all made out of plastic versus their at Xerox, which was all metal. So it's not considered a bad thing. Once you buy it, you own it, right? And nothing says you can't open that up and take a look. All right, 6, asking questions at a technical meeting without identifying your organization's affiliation.
I say bad.
Same.
Yeah, I'm personally between questionable and bad. I think it's definitely not good. All right, number 7, conduct market research and now surveys.
Good.
Yeah, sure. What kind of research is that?
Competitive.
And that's secondary. That's secondary research.
Generic.
Yeah, probably so. All right. Here's some more. Requiring participation in a study is a precondition for doing business.
I say good because it can work both ways.
There'd probably be a confidentiality waiver of some sort, I'd imagine.
I don't, yeah, I think that would be questionable at best, if not bad. And here's what my thoughts are on this is that, so, so, just like on the 737 project, you have suppliers that are dying to work with you. All right. So if you want to work with me, you have to participate in this benchmarking study, or else you can't. Well, these are huge contracts. So you're putting up there, I want to learn from you. I want all your secrets if you want to work with me. So I don't see how you can make another company do that, or bend them over the coals like that just to get them to give some business to you. All right. So let's go on number 9.
Okay, I understand now.
Trading in stock of a company after learning during a benchmarking visit about material information that has not been publicly disclosed.
Bad.
Very bad.
Yeah, I think that could lead to jail time, right? As insider trading.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
how about gathering information at trade shows?
Good.
Good.
Very good. Appearing at a technical conference as a private individual when in fact attending in official capacity as an organization's rep.
Bad.
Yeah, certainly questionable. Not good. All right, soliciting other companies directly to share information about targeted processes.
Would that be good? The keyword being share?
Yeah, that's how you're going to do it. Once you pick somebody else, if you pick Boeing, there's only one way to ask them, and that's to go out there and ask them, right? So that's how you're going to get it done. All right, asking for information that you're not willing to provide.
Bad.
That's unfair practice.
Questionable.
Questionable to bad for sure. All right, and the last one there, referring to another organization or its information while visiting a third-party organization.
Violating the disclosure agreement. Bad.
Yeah, definitely so. Even if you had let's say you had 3 parties in it, you don't, you benchmarked company 1, now you're at company 2. You don't walk into company 2 and tell them all about what company 1 was doing. That's you might share the results, but you don't talk about them out of turn. All right, very good. All right, we already know this business. Secondary benchmarking provides us with additional knowledge and plans on how to get our primary done. Everybody at this point should be absolutely locked in that the procedure is this: secondary benchmarking first, primary second. And that conducting the second research requires effective use of library and electronic tools. All of you have done it. You're there. All right, here's our eye chart again. Just reminding us where we're at in the course. This particular week we're talking about reach out. This is when we actually go do it. In your Almar case, part 1, you've done it. You've gone out, you've made the questionnaire up, and you submitted it yesterday. And today you are given the results, and that'll be in part 2 as we open it up here in just a slide or two. So we're moving from the reach out phase into the assimilate the information, starting to analyze the data. But the jump here has to be is that we've conducted the primary benchmarking. We went there, we've gathered all of our data. Now we've walked back to our facility, and now we have all this raw data, and we have to figure out what to do with it. So in this reach out step, you guys have already done this business. We've gone beyond our organization. In fact, we went, we were operational internal benchmark with the East Coast plant. So we've reached out to another division within our company. We've prepared surveys. We've prepared interview, and we've prepared a questionnaire, and we sent it out to them. We've talked to them. We know what we want to benchmark. Everybody had zeroed in on the key topics here, which is that they seem to have a QA problem, that they somehow seem to have a quicker process of making the paint, and lastly, there seems to be a retention problem in our plant, or better yet, the other plant, the East Coast plant, somehow is able to retain its people for long periods of time. So we know we have those three target items of interest in our benchmark. All right, then we have to figure out the metrics. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about metrics. So where do we get our metrics from? Who focuses in a company on metrics? I'll give you one. When you're all about the bottom line, the folks in accounting sure will give you what you're spending, accounts receivable, accounts payable. So there's some metrics there. What are other kind of metrics that we see that drive a company's bottom line besides those two?
Customer
satisfaction, that's one. What else? How about inside? When it comes to the customer, if the customer's unhappy, and you'll learn this when you get into your finance class, if the customer finds a defect with you, that's called an external failure. So anytime you see anything with the customer, it's called an external failure. So let's look for just a minute on internal failures. That's us. So what kind of internal failures do we have metrics for? Just thinking about Almar Paint now.
Production numbers,
That's right.
production level.
Production level. What else?
Training, the turnaround on training and how.
Well, I don't disagree with that either. It's a 30-day process to get people qualified, where they're qualified at. What are other metrics that, so we'll stay with yours for just a minute. Now we're talking about the people. What other interesting metrics are there that we can gather about people?
processing time.
Okay, processing time. What else?
How inspections are performed.
Okay, what else? What else about people in retention and people and quality?
Job satisfaction.
Job satisfaction. Okay, good. All right, now, like I said, what I was trying to get at the very beginning is who sets our performance metrics? Don't overthink this here. Where do we get our target numbers from?
Management.
Management, usually so. Management, it could be at the director level, VP level, and these are the people who are trying to increase yield rates, or they're trying to increase employee intention, or they're trying to reduce QA failures. And you'll know what your number is. In fact, you already started, with Almar. You know what your internal numbers are, what did not work for us over the last few months. In management, in fact, this case, the COO has got you onto a benchmarking team because he wants to reduce that. He wants to close the gap. All right. So when you're trying to find the gap, you may not know what that number is. You just know what your number is. And it isn't until you get into that other company that you figure out what it is. Now, as you go, there's some different metrics that we're looking at. And we've talked about a couple different kinds here. So for example, and everybody needs to just tune back in for here a couple seconds for sure, is there's two types of data that we are looking for from companies and from any of our benchmarking, and it's these two. The first one is quantitative data, and the next one is qualitative data. Quantitative data, as we look at business, it's the hard numbers. Here's what hard numbers look like. We produce 5,000 gallons per week. We produce 200 5-gallon paint cans and 100 1-gallon paint cans. That is quantitative data. When you start talking to people about quantitative data, it looks like this. Employee 1 has been with the company for 7 years. He has qualified on 10 positions. He has a college degree. He has a top performance rating, whatever that number would be. He has 30 days of vacation on the books. He's been sick twice in the last year. That's all quantitative data. You don't need to talk to the employee. You can just talk to HR and you can get that information right out of them. So qualitative numbers are usually pretty good starting points. So you can see what kind of employee staff they have there. Now here's the qualitative. Here's the qualitative data you get from employees. That's when you're asking them, do I have enough training? Does my manager respect me? Do I get feedback for my mistakes? Am I encouraged to correct my mistakes? So that becomes qualitative data. And of the two, qualitative data is a little mushier. And when I say that, is that as you do a presentation to your senior management, you're selling. You become the salesman. Your research now has to be sold to management because you have recommendations that's going to follow these numbers. So the better your numbers are, the more likely senior management is going to buy into the story you're going to tell them. And so you use two parts of it. Look, here's my company, and here's my employee staff, and you can look at their overall longevity and that they're not sick, that kind of business. And when I look at my qualitative surveys, it looks like for the most part people are happy. And I'm going to talk to you more about that when we open up the Almar. But what I want to show you right now is that there's two pieces of this pie. We're after both qualitative and quantitative data, and both are very different. But I would argue that the more quantitative data that you can put into your findings, the more likely you are to have your recommendations implemented by the company. All right, let's see. So that's the metrics. We know that the managers give the metrics, and you are the ones determining what the data collection is, and everybody had a good idea of what kind of data to get, and you were going across all three fields: the interview, the survey, and the questionnaire. So when you have a survey, you are getting qualitative data. When you do an interview, you can get a mix. You can get a mix of qualitative and quantitative data, because in it you're asking, why does your process work so well? And by the way, can you describe how long it takes to do the process? So one, they'll tell you why, and next they'll tell you how many minutes it takes to go through each section. So you get a mix of quantitative and qualitative. And next you have the questionnaire. The questionnaire usually goes to like HR or someone that can provide you hard data. And your questionnaire would list on it, list your employees, tell us how many months and how many years they've been assigned to, that they've worked here. What was your accession point for them? Where'd you hire them from? What's your tardiness schedule look like? What's your employee turnover rate look like? And that is all quantitative data. So once you get that back, if you look at the last bullet on this slide, it says techniques you will use to analyze and report the data. So again, I want to draw everybody back in quickly here. So you've already got a lot out of the DMAIC model that you've learned to this point at NGS. So you've already been thinking about data. You have data for your MVP. And of course, we're thinking about Almar as we go forward. But can anybody think of some techniques that they could use on data to tell a story? And this story that you need to tell in benchmarking is about the gap. We're always trying to define the gap. That gap is, what's the difference between them and me? So what kind of techniques could you do with data that we collect to demonstrate the gap? Think about your Lean and Six Sigma tools that you've learned. kind of zero in on what maybe a couple of those tools might be that you could use in benchmarking that would be really helpful to you.
Would the 5 whys count?
You know, on that 5 whys, that might even be part of your focus group or your interview question. So, you know, if you're digging into why they're so good, you know, that's a technique to get in there. All right, so now we already have the data back now. So you have the data, and it's just imperial data in front of your face, and now you've got to do something with it. All I'm really talking about here is how to lift the data off the sheet in a meaningful manner, and the techniques that we would use as a benchmarker to present that data.
Radar chart?
Want to lean.
Hey, who said the radar chart?
I did, Cameron.
Hey, Cameron, you're a rock star. In fact, I'm going to end the whole session with just a beautiful radar chart. So why do you like radar charts?
Because exactly like you said, it's a way of comparing data A with data B, and you can see the differences.
Yeah, in our whole next lesson, we're going to be having maybe 5 slides on radar charts, and so that you'll know how to prepare them. But boy, radar charts just give you a very powerful 1-slide shot that lets you compare many fields against each other, and you can rapidly see the difference between 2 organizations. But you know, you don't always have to have something as slick as a radar chart. So if you're not doing a radar chart, what else could help you present side-by-side comparisons?
I was actually thinking maybe doing a Pareto on kind of like the data and just seeing where to concentrate and focus your efforts.
Okay. You know, a Pareto is a left to right bar stack, and it's showing you what your problems are side by side. You could, if you know what your problems are inside your factory, and you went over to someone else's and you saw what their top concerns are, you could have a Pareto next to a Pareto, but they're not necessarily going to be melted into one Pareto. So in other words, if you had, let's say your mixing jets were bad at your factory, but that's not a problem at the other factory. The problem they have over there is retaining people. So their top Pareto might not match your top Pareto, and it'd be very hard to put them side by side. So you could do it, you just have to have 2 charts. So I'm looking for things that we can do for absolute comparisons, apples to apples in a 6 Sigma environment or lean. I'll give you a low-level one. A scatter plot could work. You could look at deficiency rates and try and see, you know, you could have like red dots for their companies and blue dots for our company to see timelines for processing points or failure rates. There's one. Here comes another one. How about a simple bar chart? 2-bar bar chart. That's how simple. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, probably the students will roll their eyes on this, but coming from a military point of view, perspective, how would you do this comparison? Like, say I'm looking within my unit at a problem set that I'm trying to benchmark for. Can you talk about a scenario throughout your service that you might apply this to, so I could have a better perspective on what you're trying to say?
Well, I think I told you in the very first week there, you know, this is my Coast Guard days. We were doing the search and rescue benchmark, and at the end, we had all the data from the other countries on how they do it. And what we were trying to figure out is distances that people travel within 1 hour. And we have a mathematical model that moves them either left or right of a track line. And then we looked at the other countries and see what their mathematical model was, and saw if anyone was tighter than we were. None were, but the data, I wasn't showing the whole mathematical model because the people who would have to buy a new system don't care about the mathematical model. All they care about is, can I reduce my search area after 1 hour's time? And so you have to take a complicated scene like that and drop it down into one number. So instead of saying, well, once I put 100,000 simulations in the water, after 1 hour, it's either going to be from a middle point, it's either going to be a half mile to the right or a half mile to the left. You just say that you have after 1 hour, I have a box that is 1 mile square after 1 hour. Meanwhile, Sweden, when they do it, the best they can come up with is 1.25 miles. And then I could show each of the countries on how their model produced drift after 1 hour. So in a military setting, and I don't even mean to put it in a military setting, this could be in a business setting, is if you're the technical expert, which is who goes out and does these benchmark studies, you don't have money. You don't have the money to fix your problem. Management has the money to fix your problem. So no matter how technically tough your stuff is, you've got to boil it into something that everybody can relate to, into a prime number if you can get it there, or some example that shows that this is we're on the edge of infamy if we don't if we can't fix our numbers. So I think that's about the best I can come up with, but I'm going to show you other presentations as we get into our next webinar on how to present that data. And then as well, I will be posting up onto the resource material a couple of samples of past presentations of looking at benchmarking data. So you'll have that to look at, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this slide here is, again, it's focusing on the measurement that you're taking. Remember the KPI, that's what it's called, key performance indicator. You need help with that. A benchmarking team cannot go out and discover it by themselves. You need help from management. Management is the one who's tasked you to go out and do benchmarking. And they usually make you go do benchmarking because something's wrong inside the company. And they know what the metric is. And you got to find out what it is. And if it's a first pass yield rate that's only at 60%, and they want to get it up to 85, boy, they have just given you the gap right there. You know that the gap's 25 points I need to close. But benchmarking usually doesn't work that way. It works just like it is in Almar. We are producing 25% less. Now let's go figure out what's going on at the West Coast plant and why they're doing so well. It could turn out that during the benchmark, the reason the East Coast plant is doing so well is that they're working their people like dogs over there. They could be working a double shift. You don't know until you start doing the benchmark and find out why they can produce so much more than you. We have two processes the same, but perhaps they're working a shift and a half, or perhaps they have some other way of getting it done. You don't know what that gap is until you go look at it. All right, I'm beating the drum over here again. So I'm moving through a couple of slides here quickly. All right, this slide, you saw it last week, and it didn't show up on anybody's slide this week, which is okay. This does need to show up in your final slide, though. When you do your individual secondary researching now, you're going to walk away with a lot of items, and you might be able to categorize them into here. And I'll talk more about that when I present to you what your final presentation needs to look like. This is like from last week. If we are, like for Almar, for example, we know it's a operational internal benchmark. Our level of cooperation is expected to be high because they belong to us. And the relevance information should be exact. It's a process for process. And the level of breakthrough is I should be able to fix my system. Now, if I was to do a competitive, and as some of you said in your papers, I might go to Bear, Lytton, Glidden, whatever. That becomes a competitive benchmark. Level of cooperation might be low, but if I can get in the door, I can find out if they have a different process altogether that would drive us into a quicker process of producing paint and perhaps make us the best. and you go through this each time. And if as a reminder to what each of these are, just go back to lesson 1. It talks about each of these data sources of benchmarking. So remember, there's 2 types of benchmarking: strategic, which is the company level, trying to do a breakthrough, and then you have operational, which is where most of us live at. And amongst operational, there's 4 types of places to receive your data. All right, I'm going to pop out of this for just a minute. We're almost to the end slides here. We're doing really good, so I appreciate you being troopers and hanging on through some not necessarily totally enlightening stuff here. All right, hopefully everybody's had the opportunity to go out and read creative benchmarking. I'm going to try and blow this up a little bit. I don't know if I can or not. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. So this is the HBR article out there. And this is a keeper to me. And sometimes, like I say, I do benchmarking. And I look at this when I go out and do it. And this creative benchmarking here, these guys they wanted to not just benchmark one company, they wanted to benchmark every function of their hotel. And so look at what they've done here. So here's the function, right? The very first one, you enter the lobby of the hotel. And what they said is, who can we go benchmark just on entering lobbies? So they say, hey, it's a physical environment, it's a functional piece. Well, Southwest, the Gap, Target, Sam's Club. So they thought those were worthy targets. All right, now, then say functional. We know Sam's Club, it's a big warehouse. So that's talking just about form following function. You have to enter a lobby. But let's see, if we want to be something more than that, attractive and luxurious, well, Virgin Atlantic or a Lexus car dealership maybe represents something that's above Sam's Club. So this is how their brainstorming went. And it goes on through. And I think everybody, like the greeting one, I always like that next. Everybody has that joke, hey, when I retire, I'm going to be the Walmart greeter. Because we all know they do that. They get some old person up there to say, hey, you having a good day? And so that would be a good benchmarking partner for there. But look at how they've done the whole thing. So you've entered, you've been greeted, now you're at the check-in. Who should we look at for checking in? Like they've got, if you want a pleasant place, there's Disney and Six Flags. If you want to be fast, Supermarket or Hertz. So this is really was eye-opening for me. Like I say, it's a keeper document for sure. Especially as I form a team and we're starting to think about who we can start looking at to improve our processes. Any comments on the creative benchmarking cycle? So if you were to look at your MVP and wanted to apply it there, the idea is that you would list the steps in your buying process and then determine which factors most influence the customer's perception of value at each step. Now, you're still one course away on these value statements, value-added, non-value-added statements. So in the next course, you'll actually see Almar paint again, and we'll be talking about those unhappy customers receiving your crappy paint. So we'll be dealing with customers and their perceptions about the company in the next course. So again, ideas to brainstorm companies that excel in the factors that influence the customer's perceptions. And then you're trying to build a matrix of a whole bunch of different companies you can be looking at for a functional benchmark. So just remember that on functional benchmarks, you're just looking at just one little piece of it, one little piece of your process. Okay, so I have Almar part 2 that we're going to talk about now. This is the last part of the course of tonight's class. But before I open it up, I want to look at the actual assignment itself. So this is a team project. So you work on part 2 of Almar Paint Company. All right, so like I sent you an email earlier. If you don't know, it's under the course materials right now, ready for you to download. All right, it's going to be due the day before lesson 5. So this will be, it should be October 31st is when you need to submit it. On November 1st, you will present it. So what you need to do is solve for X. And what X is that we've given you a whole bunch of data. I'll cover all that here in a minute. I'll let you see what raw material you have coming back at you here in just a minute, and then let you ask questions about it. But the idea is that you want to find a method to display that data in a way that management's willing to accept your recommendations. And you know that you're probably going to have 3 different recommendations. You're going to have something about QA, you're going to have something about personnel retention, and probably something about your process. So that could be 3 different slides. It could be 1 slide with all 3. But before you show that slide, you warm us up a little bit. And how you warm us up is with your data. Well, we did surveys, and surveys said, and then you'll fill in those blanks. But that is this is your goal. What I've normally seen for these presentations is minimally I've seen maybe, the least I've seen is like 4 slides, and the most I've seen is like about 7 slides. Each team will get 10 minutes to present their Almar findings. And look, I do not expect all teams to have the same results. We all look at things a little bit differently. Some can get more creative than others. Others just we're data hounds. This is what the data says, do this, and our company will be fixed. Other teams go a step further and says, well, no, not only if we fix this, if we do this, we'll fix our problems, but we can actually excel to head of class if we take their idea and implement that in our shop with this other twist that could make our process even quicker. So that could be part of your plan. So anyway, so this is a PowerPoint presentation produced by the team. I want to put a disclaimer in here for you Six Sigma gurus out there. When I built this course when it was built for 5 weeks. And I built the data, all the data is rigged, I made it work. I made all the data originally so that you could run a linear regression on it using Minitab. We don't teach that now. So I went back and I rigged the data differently. So for you Six Sigma guys who can't wait to munch this in Minitab, don't do it. Because I'll tell you right now, you will see no correlation, positive or negative, to the data. I don't want you to waste your time on, I don't want to put it that way. I don't want you to use Excel for linear regression, and I don't want you to use Minitab for multi-regression analysis on it. You don't need it for this. This is a simpler form. You'll look at the data, you've got to figure out a way to lift data that's meaningful for a presentation. So I'm telling you right now, don't look for hardcore, minute correlations of Six Sigma levels. It's not there for you. All right, that said, probably the most advanced thing I ever see in these presentations is radar charts. Radar charts work well. But you know what? I hardly ever see them used in real life until this morning. I was thinking about you guys, and I was really appreciative that everybody got in their presentations for Almar 1, because we're all on the same page now. I even had time to read Car and Driver, which is a benchmarking magazine when you get right down to it. They're always comparing cars together. And I scanned this in. I know it's probably horrible for you to read, but this is what a radar chart looks like. And in it, what you have here is that there is 5 vehicles being benchmarked against each other. And they've rigged their data. And when I say rigged, they are presenting their data in a manner that these outer rings, if the further out on each of these spikes is either a positive trend or something that makes a real easy comparison. So what I want to show you, I know you can't read all this stuff, but like right here, they're comparing 5 cars, and you can see here's the base price times thousands. And so you can see this car, which is in kind of a light blue here, which equates to the Mazda 6 Sport here. We can see that the Mazda 6 Sport costs about $2,500. So that's that one compared to, then you had this other guy down here at the extreme end. You had this orange one, which is the Chevy Malibu 2.0. It says it's at $16,000. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's at $36,000. So you can see that that's much more expensive. But we can look at the next data point. If you come to the left here, you can see that this is called quarter mile acceleration. Well, we have this cheap car, but he can only do the quarter mile in 15 seconds. Not only that, it looks like his 0 to 60 acceleration is taking him about 8 seconds. Meanwhile, we'll come and look at this $32,000 car. Well, he can do the quarter mile, and it looks like about just under 15 seconds, and it looks like he can accelerate to 60 in just a little over 6 seconds. So you rapidly get to see the differences between these vehicles. So like this cheaper vehicle here is also a heavy vehicle, so you can see the weight of it down here. All right, so each of these are offering us a different data point. And in this case, all of these data points are quantitative data. There's nothing quality here, but that doesn't mean you couldn't have a qualitative radar chart. It could have customer perception of value, and that could be a line on here. So this is what the radar chart looks like. When I record the next session, which will be tomorrow night, I'll be showing you a simpler version of how to bring your radar chart to life. Because in your case, you only have to produce a comparison of the gap between Almar's West Coast and East Coast plants. But this is a perfect example of the gaps right here. So if I wanted to compare the gap of 0 to 60 between Mazda 6 and Volkswagen's Passat, here it is right me. I just look on this line. I can see that he can only do it in 8. Meanwhile, the Mazda Passat is at 5.7, it looks like. So I can see that with the gap by a number, well, I don't even have to look at the number. I can just see it's a vast gap. And meanwhile, if you look over on some of these other lines, you can see that there's not much of a gap over there. And all this one is and it's the internal volume of the car. So you can see that that gap's pretty short between here and there. And sometimes you're presenting data which could be called a red herring. In other words, it's not worth anything. And maybe that's what this could represent in the Almar. Okay, here's your data, but it really doesn't mean anything. We're pretty close company to company, and you just dismiss it. It's not something that's causing us to sell more cars, less cars, or in our case, produce more paint or higher quality paint. And you'll see that as you start rolling the data out. So there's your radar chart. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip out of the PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to bring up Almar. Come on, Almar. All right, I'll make it bigger again. All right, so this is downloadable from your course materials and ready to look at. Spend a little time talking about what's happened in the last 2 months since you were brought on as a benchmarker. And part of your secondary research is you found this really cool thing right here. And that talks about that a little bit there. And you know, there's got to be a little bit of time talking about the research focus. Remember, as a benchmarking team, you don't focus your research. You know, it's given to you by your manager. They tell you what to go do. And as you go along, you've got to stay focused on it. So this talks about how to start getting data about the performance gap, the difference between us and the other company. In this case, our key performance indicators are given to us by our senior champion, as it should be. So you get some words on that effect. So we spent a little bit of time talking about each of these here. What's cycle time? What's employee satisfaction? These are all things that we were thinking about as a benchmarking team. And here I give you some guidance on what that would look like from senior management. Then we skip gears a little bit. This is called data instrumentation. Just like you did, I did the same thing. I did some interview questions. I did a questionnaire, and then I did a survey. All right, so I talk about the fact that we conducted 2 pre and post survey interviews with the East Coast managers. How many we received, which is 40 surveys, 20 from each plant, and that we yielded 60 pages of notes. I'm not going to turn over 60 pages of notes to you. Instead, I'm just going to give you this raw data. So out of the 60 pages, I'm just giving you these 6 points back. After we've done our interviews, these are kind of like the salient points, the buckets of goodness that we brought back out of the 60 pages worth of notes. And that's for you to do something with. You can talk about key points we found out in the processing of the paint, right down to the QA process steps themselves. So that'll be raw data from your interviews. The next page. Notice that it says quantitative data. This is what I was talking about before. So everybody key in on this for a minute, because you're going to spend some time looking at this data. This is hard data that you can do something with. But you can't Six Sigma it, guys. You can't mini-tab this because I've rigged it so you can't get a comparison. There's stuff you can do with this data. This is telling us what the East Coast plant does. This is all about their line employees. This is hugely important. These are the hard facts. We got the ages of these people, how long they've worked there, how long they've been on the production line, how many positions they're qualified in, where they were hired from, with a little table here that tells you, where their hiring source was from, their level of education, how many sick days they've used, vacation they've used, and how many times they've been late for work. And this would be in the last year. All right, so we have the production line. That's these 20. And then you broken out from them is manager 1 and manager 2 because there's 2 line managers. So we've broken that data out separate. You can do something with that if you like, but just know that comparing the line to the managers is apples to oranges. So try not to. I would avoid doing that unless you're comparing East Coast managers to West Coast managers, and that's worth a look. All right, so there's quantitative data on the East Coast. Now, the next page gives you quantitative data on your plant, the West Coast plant. Now, it's the same categories again that we've gotten right from HR. And it's the same, you've got 20 people and you've got the data for 20 people there. So that is your your quantitative data, your hard numbers. Now here comes your qualitative data. So I've given you most of the survey sheet. One thing I didn't include on here is that what you're seeing down below. These are the results of the 20 surveys you received back. But I asked one other question that you don't see up here, and is how long have you been at the plant? Because remember, these are sent out blindly to everybody. So the data that you have back on quantitative data, you will not be able to coordinate that and collaborate that with your qualitative data because these are just blind surveys. All right, so we ask them how long that they've been at the plant, and then by the way, how do you perceive each of the following using Likert scale 1 to 5, and there's your questions. A lot of these that you've thought of many of these as well. But here I want to point out something. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Hopefully you can see all this. And last week I was talking about dependent and independent variables. A dependent variable is one that you can do nothing about. The data just exists. I'm happy or I'm sad. The test score is the test score. The grades are the grades. But what influences them are other things. So I want you to look at these last 2 questions here. I am actively looking for a job outside this organization. That is a dependent variable. There's nothing you can do about it. Either they are or they aren't. But they can tell you what their scale is. All right, then this next one, number 9. I am very satisfied with my job. Again, that is a dependent variable. And they'll score it somewhere on here. Just know that you cannot lift this in any kind of quantitative manner. You may use it as an as a Y variable, and I'm going to explain that in just a minute. So look at these other ones, questions 1 to 8. These are all independent variables. I receive feedback. Now, if someone scores a 1 on here, or the whole group said it came out like a 2.0 for I'm receiving feedback, well, that is something you can change. You can change that immediately as a manager and supervisor. Start giving your people feedback. So you can influence it. That's what makes it an independent variable. An independent variable is something you can do something about. All right, so each of them are like this, working our way down here. So I'm encouraged to learn from my mistakes. Well, if it comes out with a low score again, you're back to those managers. How come you're not encouraging people with some kind of lessons learned? All right, number 6, people are held accountable for the quality of the work they produce. If they score low, you can do something about that. But what happens, and this is where you can get very clever in benchmarking on your own, is that I will start with all these type of questions. I will always have 8 or so independent variables. And then I will introduce my dependent variable. I am satisfied with my job. And there's a psychology piece to this, and it goes like this. If I was just to ask this question, number 1, I'm very satisfied with my job. Heck no, I didn't get no donuts today. I'm very unhappy. I'm going to give it a 1. It's the wrong place to have a dependent variable like that. Because what's happened now, the psychology here is that you're the respondent, and I'm taking someone's survey, and I just answered these 8 questions above. Well, if I just answer these 8 questions above with 4s and 5 that I agree on, I get the feedback, my manager's held accountable, my manager's competent, and then I answer, I'm very satisfied with my job with a 1, yeah, I'm kind of looking like a schmuck right now. These are, the questions are geared. If I'm answering high over here than low over here, something weird's going on with the individual, and you're starting to look for outliers, because most people will answer, if everybody's happy with the first 8, number 9 should be pretty positive as well. So that's how that dependent variable works. And then what people try and do is they will put it in a linear regression or mini tab, and they try and compare all 8 fields against this one dependent variable. And sometimes you can walk away with a trend of something to do. So I went long on that one to explain that having both are important within your survey questions, but just know that if you come back and just offer us this dependent variable without showing us some kind of relationship to these independent variables, you're not going to be able to make a sale. That sale would be that, here, I need to change, these managers' behaviors need to change because no one's satisfied with their job and they're not doing these other independent variables. All right, so there you go. All right, so first I'm going to make it a little bit smaller now. All right, so you have the scores. So for example, you see respondent 1, he's been there 1.5 years, but if you see column 1 here, it says feedback. That is what respondent 1 answered. He gave it a 5. All right, so these are their scores to the Likert scale. And this is how you would actually do it. You would pull everybody's questionnaire and you would rapidly fill out these Excel spreadsheets with their scores. And it's exactly the numbers you use, 1 through 5, and then you plug it in there, and now all of a sudden you've got 20 employees worth of scores on your survey. And now instead of just looking at these numbers, you can start to look to see, is there a total here I can play with? Is there a trend? And that's what you're trying to do. Also along the way, you did some secondary research and you discovered these things during your search, and we just offer them up there. So, and these are the questions you answer, just like you did for LMAR Part 1. But remember, this is a team effort here. So really, you're not producing me a paper. You're producing a PowerPoint that is going to identify these points. Any questions on LMAR Part 2? All right, so recapping, our big news, we're not meeting next week. I'm on travel, unexpected travel that I have to go do, and our next online meeting as a group is November 1st. We'll be online until then. However, what we're doing is that tomorrow at 8 o'clock p.m., I am going to record next week's webinar. I will come onto this site and I will make that recording. If you would like, you're welcome to join me, but please know there's no pressure for you to do that at all, because after I record it, NGS will post it up, and you just look for the code phrase inside the webinar and post it online, and it counts. But if you come tomorrow and you listen and participate, you can do that as well. So I'm back online tomorrow to record tomorrow's session, which will count for the next Wednesday's, the 25th session. The next time we officially meet will be the 1st. On the 1st, what will happen? It's all you. So we'll come online, we'll hear your Almar presentations, and then we will also hear your benchmarking plan presentations. I have not given you that assignment fully. When I record tomorrow's session, I will lay out all the final details that go into your final benchmarking plan presentation as it relates to your MVP. All right, with that said, if I have any questions from anybody, this is a good time to ask. And if you're done, you may leave. If you want to talk to me, I'll hang around. It was my pleasure to be online with you tonight, as always.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Edgar, thanks. Hey, I really liked your paper, man. That was good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good night.
Hi, Jay.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Thanks, sir.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Night, sir.
Bye, Judith.
Yes.
Anybody left online?